and welcome back to Downtime Activities. Matthew here with another help action for you guys. Today we're going to go over something near and dear to my heart as somebody who likes playing big tanky characters, and that is damage reducing abilities in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. This is a kind of weird and muddy subject because there are lots of different effects that can reduce or have or altogether remove damage, and it's really confusing when multiple of these abilities start stacking up on top of each other. So this is my attempt at a comprehensive guide to cover all of those different effects and kind of the order of operations for how they're applied, so that whenever you have those questions come up in your game, like they've come up in ours, you'll know the right steps to take. So let's check it out. In this comprehensive guide to damage-reducing abilities, we're going to go over as many damage-reducing abilities as I was able to come up with and how they interact with each other. We're going to discuss resistance from things like magic items, the Barbarian's Rage, spells like Absorb Elements. We're going to be discussing damage-having effects that aren't resistance, like succeeding on saving throws, uncanny dodge, and failing certain saving throws if you have abilities like Evasion. We're also going to be discussing damage-reducing abilities like Heavy Armor Master, Interception Fighting Style, the Spirit Shield from the Ancestral Guardian Barbarian, the Guardian Coil from the Fathomless Patron Warlock, all of those different effects that have a flat number that is reduced from the damage taken. We're also going to be discussing how all of this interacts with temporary hit points from things like the Inspiring Leader feat or the Arm of Agathis spell. And last but certainly not least, we're also going to be talking about Arcane Ward from the Abjure Wizard and how it interacts with all of this stuff, because it is weird and very much its own thing. To start with, I would like to discuss Uncanny Dodge and Evasion, specifically for rogues, because they get both of these abilities and there tends to be some confusion with how both work and how they never really are ever going to be able to stack for you. And a lot of players think that they can. So let me break it down pretty straightforward. Uncanny Dodge only works on attack rolls, and it requires your reaction. Evasion only works on dexterity saving throws, and it is active all the time, no action or reaction required from you. This means that if somebody makes an attack roll against you that would deal damage, be it a spell attack roll or a weapon attack roll, you can use Uncanny Dodge to have that damage using your reaction. Evasion, if you were to fail a saving throw, that's a dexterity saving throw that would deal damage, you'll still take half, and if you are to succeed, you'll take none. There are some players who would believe that something like a fireball hitting you and you failing the saving throw would mean that you would take half damage, but then you could use your reaction to have it again with Uncanny Dodge, but they do not stack like this. The only way that these two are really going to ever stack is for some spells that allow both different effects to be used on different parts of the spell. An example of this is Lightning Arrow, that has an effect that deals damage on an attack roll, as well as a follow-up AoE dex save effect. In this situation, if you were hit by that attack, the damage that's dealt by it could be halved by Uncanny Dodge, and if you failed the dex save, the AoE effect would also be halved by Evasion, but these two would not stack for either of those effects. They would half each of them individually. Next up, I'd like to go over Arcane Ward really quickly because it is by far the weirdest effect on this list. In a Sage Advice article, Arcane Ward was described as a magical effect with its own hit points. This means that reducing effects don't really apply to it. Have damages, resistances, immunities, these are all applied after Arcane Ward takes damage for whoever it is affecting. This also applies with temporary hit points, and this was confirmed by a Q&A with Jeremy Crawford, that Arcane Ward takes damage first. That means before temporary hit points take damage and before any reducing effects are applied. Next up, we're going to go over damage-reducing effects that are straight damage reductions, like Heavy Armor Master, the Interception Fighting Style, that stuff. These are always applied before resistance and before any other halving effects. This means that you will reduce by whatever that flat number is, and then apply the halve multiplicative abilities of things like resistance. This is the order of operations, that's how it's confirmed in the books, so that's how it goes. Halving and resistance effects are applied at the same time after this and can stack as long as they meet certain criteria. For instance, if you have an effect that says it reduces the damage taken by half and resistance, those two can both apply. Or if you have two different effects that are both halving your damage and aren't resistance, they can apply both to the same thing, meaning you take a quarter total of the damage. However, multiple sources of the same resistance do not stack.
Lastly, temporary hit points is lost before true hit points, and it gets to apply all of your other reductions, meaning the flat damage reductions, the halving reductions, and resistance effects. This has been a lot of words, a lot of breakdown, kind of sporadic, so let me break it down in a really easy to think about way as an order of operations here. You are getting hit by an effect. Step 1, Arcane Ward if you have it. Without any resistances or reducing effects, will reduce incoming damage by the amount of hit points it has. The remaining damage is now hit by all straight damage reductions. This means anything that removes a flat number or a die roll of damage are applied next. The number that remains is then halved by any half damage effects or resistance effects, multiple of these stacking so long as they're not the same resistance. And lastly, whatever damage is left is taken away first from temporary hit points, and then it will affect your true hit points. Let's give an example here. Let's say you were taking 100 damage, and you had, in some way, all of these effects in one way or another. If that 100 damage were to hit you, and you had 20 hit points on your Arcane Ward, 20 hit points would be taken off of that 100 damage, and 80 damage would be left over. Let's say you then have a straight damage reduction of 10 to the damage type hitting you. That 80 is then reduced to 70. If you then had also resistance to that effect, it would reduce that 70 down to 35. If you had 25 temporary hit points, it would then affect that 25 temporary hit points, leaving 10 hit points to affect your true HP. This is a very extreme example. I think I did all the math right there, although it was in my head. But this is the kind of way the order of operations works in reducing these effects until eventually, if there's any left over, your true hit points will take damage.
That has been our comprehensive guide on damage reducing abilities in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I hope this has helped clear some stuff up for you guys out there. I know before I kind of did the research for this video, I was confused on how this kind of all lined up, but hopefully this has made those waters a little less muddy and made a little more sense of those kinds of interactions. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Please comment any other interesting damage interactions I might have missed or something I might have gotten wrong in this video if you know a different way the rules interact. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.